Hello music lovers and welcome back to the Woodshed. This week we had a ton of questions from my Patreon. I'll give you a little Q&A action. Let's roll it. Alright, question number one comes to us from Hudson. Hudson says, what is the most important thing you think a young person like me should know? Or something that you wish that you knew when you were younger? Alright, Hudson, so one of the things that I wish that I knew when I was younger was more intervallic knowledge. When I was young, I was playing a lot from memorization of fiddle tunes and the shapes that I learned from fiddle tunes. I wish that I had incorporated the idea of fretboard knowledge and intervals earlier on. Another thing I wish I'd listened to earlier on was I wish I had focused a bit more on playing with a singer. By that I mean obviously a lot of music that I was playing was instrumental, and I think as an adult, there's a real skill set to being adaptable to a singer and a singer's groove and a singer's sense of timing to really make someone else sound great. Next question comes to us from Aaron. Aaron says, you've mentioned quite a few times licks of letting the music tell you where it wants to go. Once I've grasped intervals and I have a decent freedom of the neck, what is a good way of staying out of pet licks and moving into the flow of music? Alright, that's a great question. The number one place that I like to start with something like that is take my hands off the guitar, right? A lot of times we as guitar players, we're playing with where our hands are familiar with going, and we're not thinking from like what would really sound nice, or we're thinking about maybe a really cool groove or rhythmic idea, or even a harmonic standpoint. Sometimes it just takes stepping away from the guitar and listening and trying to sing something in your head. Then once you have the knowledge that you mentioned of intervals, fretboard knowledge, being able to bring that idea to life is the next step. So to recap, not playing from your hands first in memorization, but really trying to play from the music that's inside you. A lot of times when I think about it, we practice technique and we practice facility. Creativity and imagination need to be practiced just like anything else. Those are muscles that if you don't work out, you don't practice those muscles and you don't work on those muscles, they're not going to be really strong. So where you end up is like you have a lot of technical facility and a lot of fretboard knowledge, but you don't have, maybe a creative idea or an identity or a sound. A lot of times when you're looking to really focus in on staying away from pet licks and come up with a sound, you've got to be thinking and listening in your head first, thinking about what you want to hear, not what your hands are telling you to play. Next question up comes to us from Jay. Jay says, have you ever considered doing a limited run of your signature guitar in the colors of a broadcaster or blackguard with the torched body, 24 frets, neck shape? I think this would be a killer modern take on a classic. Yeah, okay, Jay, I have thought about different variations of what it would look like, maybe doing something more traditional in the signature model. I think the next thing that I would like to see, because we offer so many flat finishes, personally I think I'd like to see some gloss finishes. Ben Eller just got basically a copy of the Whiskey Barrel guitar, but he got it in this really cool green paint job and it looks really, really killer. So I thought about maybe just doing a limited run of gloss colors. But yeah, obviously I'm a huge fan of the original blackguards and broadcasters and no-casters and stuff like that. So I wouldn't think it's like out of the realm of possibility to see a guitar like that come to fruition. Next question comes to us from Brad. Brad says, Andy, will you name some good recognizable themes or music to help recognize a modal sound? Okay, yeah, no problem, Brad. One of the things I look for when I'm trying to memorize an interval, like let's take modes and shrink that down. For example, you have the raised fourth. That'd be a Lydian type of mode, right? If I'm having trouble memorizing what that sound sounds like, I will seek out a theme of music that I'm super familiar with, maybe something that I love from my childhood before I start playing guitar. And I'll try to apply, okay, if that theme is got a raised fourth sound, now before I even play the guitar, I can kind of recall that theme piece of music from memory, and that'll help me identify an interval. Okay, for example, if you think of a flat 9 and a 1, I always think of that as the Jaws theme, right? So if you had 1 and then flat 9, right? Another one would be the Simpsons theme, right? So if you're trying to memorize the sound of a Lydian chord, if you're trying to memorize that sound, the Simpsons really helps me. That really is a neat way for me to kind of memorize it. Again, it goes back to just trying to find intervals and then familiar songs or pieces of music that you can draw that from. So let's say if we're in an A minor key and I need to hear 5 to flat 5 and I don't automatically know where that's on the guitar, I can call this. And that gives me that sound. So that's 5 and then flat 5. So, taking any piece of music that you've ever come across and like just looking at what those intervals are that make that music and then memorizing what that is internally, not just by the shape that it makes on the fretboard. All right, this next question comes to us from a man, Ben Eller. Ben Eller says, what's the most common problem you hear in young new guitar players' tones? This is interesting, right? We're living in an era of load boxes and things like neural DSPs and fractal axe-effects and Helix and Kemper and UA aux to where you can play your tube amps. I think one of the things that I'm hearing a lot of right now, I don't like to say the word wrong or incorrect or anything like that, but one of the things I'm hearing is a lot of similarity and it's making things sound a bit stale. When I hear a great tone that I really love, usually what that involves is the personality of the person. Like when I hear Mark Knopfler's tone, it instantly sounds like Mark even before any other playing starts happening. Stevie Ray Vaughan, Eric Johnson, whoever. Like all that's the obvious thing. What happens though is if you're new to instrumental guitar or new to the guitar in general, and maybe you've got a neural DSP or a fractal axe-effects and you're just downloading an exact copy of someone else's tone, it creates a bit of a stagnant kind of space. Like when I get on Instagram, I hear a lot of guys using exactly the same patches dialed in the same way. And I feel like that kind of leaves me wanting a bit more personality. As far as to put something very specific on it, common issues that I hear with tone, too much compression, too much low end, too much distortion or gain, and like not enough of the guitar's personality is coming through. Like most of the time when I'm getting online, I hear guys with so much verb and delay and low end and distortion, it sounds okay if they're playing by themselves, but the moment a band would start or a moment you try to mix that, it would just disappear or it turns to mush. A lot of times when I'm seeing guys that are young cats in the game, they just have all of the reverb, all of the delay, all of the gain, and it just doesn't have any articulation to it. So I would think wherever you think it sounds good when you're playing by yourself, maybe turn all of those settings back a little bit if you're going to play in a band. When I'm talking about the gain, the distortion, how wet and dry the tone is, things like that. All right, the next question comes to us from John. John asked me, he says, Andy, is there a big difference in sound between an F-style mandolin and an A-style mandolin, or is it mostly cosmetic? John, actually, in my ears, there is a bit of a tonal difference. I think if you're looking for that thicker, woodier kind of tone, I definitely look for a mandolin that has F holes. So even if it's an A style, if it has F holes, it's going to sound more traditional. And by traditional, I mean the mandolin tones that I love. Ronnie McCurdy, Sam Bush, Chris Thiele, guys like that, Adam Steffi, Dan Tyminski, Sierra Hull. Everybody plays those F-hole style mandolins. Now, most of those mandolins are actual full Fs. Now, there are videos of Adam Steffi playing an A model, and I can't remember what kind of mandolin it is. It might be a Dudenbassel, but I don't know for sure. But I think it's got F-holes. What you will discover is even if the mandolin is an F, if it's got a sound hole, it's going to sound drastically different. Think of it this way. Mandolins that have the sound hole, like the egg-shaped sound hole, they sound more like the mandolin tones from the Godfather theme. They're a very classic Italian restaurant type of mandolin, a lot of tremolo. If you're looking for that, thick, woody, bluegrass type of tone, you're going to want an F style or a mandolin that has F holes. All right, the next question comes to us from I can't pronounce it. I really suck at this. This is from Sotirios. That's Sotirios. He says, Andy, what's your main pedal setup? In general, what I like to do is have the Strymon timeline, and I set the mix on an expression pedal. So when the heel is down, there's no delay, and when the toe is down, it's the most amount of delay. I use a light verb sometimes for spaciousness. If it's a dense mix or a very lively room, I won't use any verb at all. And I use a prototype Wampler pedal that we're working on that will be out very soon. And then I use the Sir Woodshed comp, and that's pretty much it. Now sometimes when I switch up and I use maybe a traditional Telecaster pickup, ashtray type of thing, I'll use my Woodshed comp with an RC booster. I like that sound to give that push kind of tone. Very, very, very mild push kind of sound. Just kind of more fattens it up. That really helps me get some of those, you know, big telly kind of sounds that I like for chicken picking and stuff like that. In general, when it's overdrives, I keep it really simple. However, about 6 months ago, I did get one of the Andy Timmons pedals. It's really cool I leave it for like super fun, super shred type stuff. It's just a fun sound that has gobs of gain. So I really don't use it a ton, but I do like it occasionally. I use a BB preamp occasionally for a very mild kind of overdrive if I'm using maybe a Strat setup or something like that. Or even if I'm using like a 335 and I want something closer to a Robin Ford, Larry Carlton style of tone. That BB preamp really likes those guitars a lot. So, you know, it's a pretty simple setup. If I ever use any time-based stuff, I use a Wampler Terraform. That handles things like, you know, tremolos and Leslies and flangers and univibes. It's a really great pedal. It's all in one. It's got all the sounds that you'd ever want in the world, and it's got some MIDI switching capabilities, so my RJM can just tap right into it, and then each patch can have a different sound in the Terraform. So it's a pretty simple setup, really. All right, the next question comes to us from Steve. He's asking about the Axe-Fx, fractal Axe-Fx patches that I have for sale on my website. He says, do these work with the FM3? So on my website, you'll see the Axe-8 bundles and you'll see the Axe-Fx 3 bundles. None of my patches in the Axe-Fx 3 are super CPU-laden, high horsepower patches. They're pretty much straightforward, so they should drop right into an FM3. Now, if I'm not mistaken, there's some cabinet differences that I think come on the FM3 versus the Axe-Fx 3. I'm not real positive. I don't own an FM3, but I know that I've had customers buy the FM3, buy the Axe-Fx 3 patches for their FM3, and they said they dropped right in. So as far as I know, yes, they will drop right in. All right, now this question comes to us from Mike R. Mike says, hey there, love the Puccini lesson you just posted. On the totally opposite end of the spectrum, I was wondering if you might consider doing a quick lesson on technique and building endurance to play James Hetfield type of rhythm. That's the constant downstroke metal chug type of thing. All right, let's scope out for a second. Let's just use the term endurance. Basically, you don't want to brute force anything. If you notice when James plays downstrokes all night long, he can play 2 hours worth of the show, doesn't bother him. If you're trying to brute force something and you feel pain or resistance and it's not really happening, you need to adjust your technique. Now, there's no one size fits all adjustment. You gotta understand that when you're dealing with right hand technique, you're trying to find the one that personally fits you and keeps you from overloading your hand, right? That's the same with alternate picking. If you notice guys like Petrucci or Chris Thiele, they can alternate pick all night long and they never get fatigued and they never run out of gas. That's because it's not a stressful, repetitive motion that's going to damage things in the long run. You have to really take care of your hands and you have to look for something that's comfortable. Now, here's a big asterisk, okay? Everybody's hands are different and they're going to look different. So if you find the right answer that feels good, but it doesn't look like your hero's hand, don't worry about it. Here's why. Tony Rice, Jimmy Herring, Eric Johnson, John Petrucci, Al Di Meola, Guthrie Govan, they can all alternate pick crazy lines all day long, but they all look super different and their hands look super different. That's because they found the mechanic that works best for them, okay? So I encourage you, when you're looking for any kind of right hand technique and any kind of endurance, it's all about comfort. Trying to find the technique that feels the most comfortable in your right hand and not obsessing over the way it looks or certain things that are catchphrases now in the industry, right? Look for the one that feels the best, that allows you to sound the best. Listen and sometimes even just record yourself playing and go with the one that sounds the best when you're playing. If you have any pain in your hand, any pain in your forearm, or anything like that, it's not the right way to do it, right? So that's just a shorthand answer. Maybe we'll do a full episode on the Woodshed about that in the future. All right, thank you guys for hanging out with me this week in the Woodshed. Sorry this one's coming at you a little late. We did a gig at the Ryman Auditorium, and that's going to be up very soon. It was really, really incredible, and it was the first time I've ever got to play that room, and man, I've got some good footage for you guys. It's amazing. So again, thanks for hanging out. If you're looking for lessons, tabs, backing tracks, all of that kind of good stuff, you can go to patreon.com/AndyWoodMusic. And if you're looking to purchase things like my songs, backing tracks, various media, talking live at the Bijou, talking Acoustic fractal patches and all that kind of good stuff, you can grab all that from my website, which is AndyWoodMusic.com. All right, thank you guys for hanging out in the shed. We'll catch you next time.